Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Hello, everyone, and welcome back.
Good morning, Mike. It's a beautiful day. The weather in the Midwest is gorgeous now, but that probably means a polar vortex coming in winter.
Oh, yes, that'll probably cause problems later on. We've actually had some decent weather. Our intro to fall has been actually pretty mild for once. Usually we have pretty scorching heat through the month of August, and it was actually kind of cool for once, and a good amount of rain for us also.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's jump into some news items here. Oh, before we get into that, let's just do our quick main topic. Our main topic is our initial impressions with data agents. So data agents is a item that you can create in the Fabric workspaces, and it allows you to create a custom experience around talking, connecting to, and chatting about your data and having it return results for you. So that's data agents, and we're going to kind of just walk through our initial impressions of what's going on there and what Microsoft is building and how you might want to use it. All right, that being said, now we can do the news. Tommy, give us some news.
Well, we got one main item. Guess what? The Chicago Fabric / Power BI user group is coming back in town, downtown on October 2nd. Mike, I am so glad we're going back on in person. There's nothing like it. And what we're talking about is Chicago's crash course on Fabric. I think for a lot of people who listen to us, or if we're talking a lot about Fabric, but we also hear from you guys in mailbags and all the other social medias that, well, it would be great to play with it, but our organization can't. I have seen videos, but I want to ask questions and interact with it. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're actually going to do a lot of live demos. We're going to let people drive and actually kind of see what it's all about. And again, really take advantage of being in person. And that's a big thing for me when I'm in person, Mike, is rather than just doing something we could do on a video, is what can we take advantage of the people in there to be able to ask questions, change course a little. So I'm really excited to go back in person, my friend.
So this will be on a Thursday in October, so it's a Thursday, and then it will be also at the Microsoft office downtown Chicago. So just for those of you who are in the area, it's going to be in the downtown Chicago Microsoft office,
right.
The Aon building,
right north of Millennium Park on Randolph. So super easy to get to. And we're doing it at 3 p.m. So this is a cool thing. So we're changing it up. A lot of people have said for us to do that. So it's a great time. Also, rather than trying to meet at 6 p.m., it will be 2 hours. And please make sure to register on Meetup because this is a big thing for the building. You are not allowed in unless you provide your full name. So please make sure to do that. Last time we had a good group, but I think the last time was with Marco Russo too.
Yes. And then also the building, signing up and things, there's a little bit of a barrier to entry to make sure that we actually want you to show up because it's a lot of effort for us to go downtown, get into the building, all those things as well. Bring your computers if you are going to be coming because we'll try to get you hands-on time with Fabric and things.
Awesome. I cannot wait.
That being said, let's jump into some of these articles. Tommy, one more final thought here.
Yeah.
The link for the meetup is in the description below on the video. So it's down below. You can use the meetup link if you'd like. It's down below in the description of this video. And this will be here for the next couple videos until we actually have the actual event. Yeah. All right.
Same thing if you're on the podcast listening. If you're looking on Apple, Spotify, the description, there's a link there as well.
Excellent. All right. Jumping into our main topic. So data agents. Tommy, you found two kind of blog post articles about this. Let's kind of unpack these and maybe use these articles to kind of give us some context to what is a data agent. Maybe we should start there a little bit and kind of start from the beginning, and then we can start walking into some of our impressions.
Yeah, so this is the evolution of AI skill. And Mike, we've talked about Copilot a lot, but I don't think we've given a lot of due time to what data agents are, the impact of them. And we'll ask the question at the end of the podcast, is this considered a game changer? There's two major things that we feel that this is worth an episode right now. It's this idea around data source instructions, where per data source, I can provide to the data agent what I want it to do, how it should interact with the data source in terms of joining with things and what its actions should be. But probably the more significant one here is the orchestration with Microsoft Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is the one that lives in all of Microsoft business applications. It lives in your Dynamics. It lives in any data source you can imagine. It's a standalone outside of Fabric as well, but again, now available utilizing data agents as well. So, Mike, these are really two major features that before with the AI skill by itself was like, okay, this is cool, neat, fine. But this is really giving this a more comprehensive feature for not just doing it and creating it, but for most organizations and most users to use it and to utilize it.
So this is, I've done some work with the agents or preparing your data for Copilot. So prepare your data for AI inside the semantic model
Right, which
as
is
well.
different than this.
Which is different than this because this is its own item inside the workspace.
Right.
But in general, I've looked at this going, when I was doing the prepare your data, your semantic model for Copilot, it was able to get close to a lot of things. But again, it's kind of I'm going to use the word non-deterministic. It doesn't actually have like enter this, get that out.
Right.
It's kind of a little bit less consistent on its answers. Now you can definitely guide it, the prompting and the text you provide in it. So this is where they talk about the instructions. So the instructions are what they talk about in the agents is here's the things the agent must know, how you want it to respond, things about your data set, your semantic model, other things that are in there. When you're talking about business language or logic that the business user knows, you're giving it context to that. And then it will use that information to guide its answers. But very rarely does it give you like, this is the question I'm going to ask. It needs to respond exactly this way every time. And so this is where it gets a little bit weird because it gets you close, but sometimes it's a little bit off. Now, let me caveat this.
Yeah.
The results it gives you back might not be what you want, but typically I've seen the numbers are spot on and it tells you how it got to those answers. So it says, I've used sum of sales, I've used this column, and that's how it resolved the number. So it seems to be a bit more clear. Like I can trust the numbers. I feel like a bit more because it's actually showing me what columns and measures it used to write DAX, and then that DAX was then being used to show you the answer. So from that perspective, I think I can trust the numbers. I feel like a bit better now. But
how can you trust the numbers for something you didn't ask for?
Well, you are asking for it. I mean, you're asking for what is my sum of sales in 2014 compared to 2013 or something. Like you're asking for something, but does it give you like a chart like a graph?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Those kind of results, like it doesn't always give you charts or graphs all the time. And so I actually, when I was doing prep data for AI, I had a couple instances where it would return, here's my result. It said an error. I couldn't give you anything, but then it showed me I used this measure and I used this date time and I used this column. And I was like, so you returned a null or something that wasn't there, but yet you still told me how you got to the answer, and yet I still can't see the number. So it was a little bit, again, it is in preview. It's still new. So I think it's give it some leeway here, but that was one of my initial challenges was it was a little bit more difficult to figure out, okay, what are you actually going to get out of this with proper answers? Anyways.
So I think it's important you say that, Mike, because we're talking about 3 different products already. And it's important that they are not at all connected to each other, right?
So it's similar in concept, but it's different in product.
But they don't overlap in terms of the effort or the work that
that's a great distinction.
Right. So I think it's probably important at this point to kind of break down what we're talking about. And especially for people listening, if you have not used it, that they don't overlap in terms of, I think, the prompting and the work that you do, the product that it is. So you mentioned the AI prep for data in AI, which is part of desktop, which goes to Copilot in the standalone in Power BI or the Power BI Copilot. So there's some features there where I can tell Power BI, one of the administrator settings is, or for the data source, like, hey, only show Copilot data sets that I have said that have been prepped.
Correct. That's an admin setting. Yes.
Right. That's not a data agent.
And that way you're covered, and it's not going to just show any random semantic model you have access to. Right. Only going to show in standalone Copilot. These are the only semantic models that I've prepped. They're certified as prepped. Kind of think of it that way. It's like I'm acknowledging that this is prepped, and then the agents will only use those as data sources.
Right. And again, that lives in the Copilot Studio, not a data agent, not Copilot, part of the Microsoft platform, part of the
Yes.
Fabric platform. Then there's Copilot Studio, which I don't even have to touch Fabric ever. Actually, the only connection is say connect to a data agent that's already created. Copilot Studio allows me to create orchestration, automation, data agents across all my business data. We call it more soft data. It's your SharePoint, it's your Dynamics, and nothing that we've structured in Fabric. Again, that lives. I can do that as a career, never touch Fabric in my life. And then finally, there's data agents, which are another feature or artifact in Microsoft Fabric, which allows me to do what we're talking about today, or what we're kind of that overlap where we have the instructions, what we wanted to do to a data source. We can connect it to Copilot Studio. But the interesting thing, Mike, especially why I brought this up is because it's funny that you're talking about the instructions you're given to Copilot, the prep for data, that has no correlation or overlap with data agents, which is kind of weird when you actually think about it. So if I prep data for AI, that does not overlap to data agents at all.
Are you meaning that data agents are not going to use the information that you provide in the semantic model for this? Yes, correct. Right. That I would agree with. But you are, in the data agents experience, you are having a similar experience around you're adding instructions to the data agent. So I want to be clear, like
2 separate instructions.
Yeah. And and it's kind of like they're like 2 separate machines, and I'm talking to them independently. It would be like in my family, I would talk to my wife in a conversation, and then I'd have to repeat the same information or different information to one of my children because they're not in the same room, right? So I'm literally talking to 2 separate things.
Exactly.
And it's not like the data agent is at this point in time, it's not like the data agent can go read the instructions that were given to the semantic model to understand additional context. Maybe that'll happen in the future, but for now you can't go access that information.
Right. As these cool days in September, for whatever reason, we cannot do that. So data agents, but they'll have better, I would say probably more enhanced capabilities. The point of it is that we can connect to not just a semantic model and prep that, but any data in Fabric we can use as a data source. Well, lakehouses, warehouses, semantic models, we can use as a source to basically prompt and tell the data agent what we want to do. And there's a lot of potential here because, Mike, a lot of people I talk to, at least when they want Copilot, they're like, this is great that we can do this SharePoint Dynamics, but what about all this data in Fabric? Right? Like, what can we do with this? And that's really, I think, the goal of data agents. And let's kind of start there, Mike, because I want to ask you a few questions because I've been doing a ton with this, and I don't want to say I got issues, but there's some weird things in terms of the application for this. And for me, I want to start here. The application for this in my organization, I always think in the terms of adoption. I think of rollout. I think of getting people to use this rather than me creating it. I want to make sure that people are going to utilize this and make that part of their normal operations. Why are they being positioned, or how do you see them being positioned right now in an organization?
How do I see it? Right now, let me.
Sure.
I'm going to give you some context.
Rephrase your question and then answer.
Yes and no. Like, how are they being used? I don't think they are, honestly. At this point in time, I don't think organizations are using them because they're still in preview. They're kind of very new. Like, so I don't think organizations are using them right now today actively to do their work. So are they used? No. Are they starting to be explored? I think the answer is yes. And what I would hear is I feel like I'm hearing a lot of messaging coming from leadership, or organizations are asking BI teams, hey, we're hearing AI becoming a very important thing in my business intelligence. We're seeing AI show up in Databricks or in Snowflake or in other experiences. And they're like, well, where does chat with your data exist inside Fabric? And so I think this is Microsoft's response to some of that is, here's our flavor of a data agent that is more, it's broader than just a semantic model. So one thing that's a feature of these data agents, when you talk about data agents or Fabric data agents specifically, is when you read some more of the documentation here, it says you can add additional context to the data agents. directly through like SharePoint or other locations. So like there's the ability for you to add other data sources outside of just the scope of the semantic model.
Right.
So you have a knowledge library. It's inside SharePoint. You can give that reference point some information back to the agent, and now the agent can use that information to help people answer questions about things. So that might be something else that's useful here, right? You're mixing and matching multiple data sources to the agent level. So I think organizations are asking for it. I think this is Microsoft's resolve to that. How is it going to finally be used? What is going to really move the needle here? I'm not sure yet, Tommy. I think that for me, the jury is still out. I haven't quite decided if it's yes, 100%, I bought on board, this is going to be what we're going to do. Or is this more of like, we need to wait for Microsoft to kind of sand out the rough edges at this point? I'm not sure yet.
So this is like, so first you almost caused me to do a spit take when you said organizations aren't using this, because that's an interesting, actually, that's a really probably good take here, because you answered more to me what data agents are trying to solve, not necessarily what it's solving now. Because Mike, I would actually agree with you where data agents feel almost like a beta version of what's going to happen or what's going to be there. Because let's not cut around corners here. I think there's some major limitations here for it to be adopted. If someone were to ask me right now, we want to roll this out and have everyone trust it and use it, I would say we can pilot it, but I'm not going farther than that. We're going to test it out with your data, but there's a lot of limitations for the developer here in terms of using it effectively, or I think using it in the way that kind of AI demands in terms of the intake process, the ingestion, the training, and then actually what people are going to ask. Because again, there's a lot more complex things here than just creating an agent. This is not an if, then, this, that type of scenario. And it's kind of almost being seen that way. When I think agent, I think, oh, automation. But you have three major pieces here. You have the instructions I give, which is the only thing I can do right now. There's nothing else I can do to influence this data agent. There's the data source itself, which hopefully we're prepped. And then there's the known unknown, the user query. And these three parts make up a data agent, but I only have control on one of these, really.
And there's also, I mean, think about the data agent as it relates to like the semantic model, right? Semantic models, you're asking questions of a semantic model. And then the semantic model is you're basically asking questions of the semantic model. It's trying to interpret the tables, the relationships, and then potentially write you some DAX that says, here's the DAX I'm going to write you that will then return a table or some kind of information. And then maybe it'll attempt to build a visual for you. Okay, that's the semantic model. Prep your data for AI experience. Now, this agent experience has a little bit more to it. And when you read the docs on what is a fabric agent, it talks about like there's, you have to parse the question. You have to validate that it understands the question and knows what to do.
Yeah.
Then the AI is making a decision to say, where does this data source come from? And when you go back to the docs, the agents can pull from Lakehouse. It can pull from Warehouse. It can pull from a Power BI data set or a KQL data set. So this agent has actually got more scope to the amount of data sources that it has. So, again, if we're thinking about prep data for AI, that's only a semantic model. This one's talking across multiple things. And then if you look further down the documentation, there's actually three different, I guess, call it tools, right? It's almost like they're building like multiple agents. It's like an agent for the other agents, right, Tommy? Like I'm going to ask you a question, and then it's going to deep think or think about, okay, Michael asked a question. Should this question be answered directly from the Lakehouse tables, or should I go right to the data warehouse, or is this a KQL database? I don't know. So it's trying to reason its way through that, and then it's using based on what you're asking. It's doing natural language to SQL for Lakehouse and Warehouse.
It's a lot of work.
It's doing natural language to DAX for semantic models, and then it's doing natural language to KQL for SQL databases. Now, this is my experience so far. Natural language to SQL experiences that Microsoft has given me has been really solid. SQL is a very known entity. T-SQL might be a little bit sketchy. It might be giving you a bit different answers there because it's a little bit less frequently used than just regular SQL. But in my experience, when I've talked to agents about SQL, it's spot on. SQL's very well known. There's lots of examples. They've trained a ton of information on SQL. Awesome. DAX has been dicey for me. Like there hasn't been enough.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been getting better of writing DAX, but it's also hasn't been like as smooth, I feel like, as doing the SQL experience. Sometimes it does some weird things, and I'm like, I'm not sure I understand why it did what it did here.
Yeah.
And then again, I don't use KQL every day, so I really couldn't have a phrase on. But again, I would also argue KQL is a very specific language for a very specific type of databases. And since it's not like writing Python, which like that would be everywhere, right? If you said write me Python, it'll just be able to burn out Python and be like, no problem. So whenever I'm in a notebook, and this is over the weekend, Tommy, here, we had a little bit of a conversation on Reddit. I don't know if you saw this conversation on Reddit. But someone, I think Marco Russo, had made an announcement that said data flows Gen 2 is nice, but more and more people are going to start favoring notebooks for a pro code or more code solution because of the cost. He was actually ribbing data flows Gen 2 on how expensive it was compared to running a notebook. And I believe the PM for data engineering, Mark Cromer, jumped in and said, why do you think that? And I jumped into this conversation with Marco and said,
if I saw this,
yes, 100% agree. Like, the data flows Gen 2, your days are marked if you don't start getting more price competitive. And so Mark Cromer came in and said, hey, we're giving you a nice, pretty UI with data flows Gen 2. What's the reasoning? Why wouldn't you want to pay more for an easy to use interface? I said, look, my perspective is if you're paying 10 or 20% more for a nice, pretty easy to use interface,
let's have a conversation. Yeah,
I'm willing to sacrifice that little bit of extra, maybe even 30% more of like a data engineering job at that time. And then again, my experience here would be is just because I use a UI to generate the code, right? I'm only doing that for like 10, 15, 20 minutes to generate the UI. So charge me more for when I'm in the UI only. And then if I'm running a scheduled job, don't keep charging me more to run that job. It feels like I'm penalized every time I run the job between when I run the UI versus when I run the actual job. So I said, when you're charging me 50% plus, like it's double the price, or, how I've seen it was data flows Gen 2 was like double the price of data flows Gen 1, which is double the price of a notebook. So you're like way, way above, 3-4x more cost and so that's when I start saying no. That's when I'm like, that's not worth it to me, because we're no longer competing data flows Gen 2 against Talend. We're competing data flows Gen 2 against Copilot and notebooks. And so what I'm finding is customers, I'm like, hey, you've got this ultra knowledgeable, again, we're going back to agents. I promise I'm bringing it back to agents.
I'm waiting.
We have this ultra knowledgeable.
Land this. Yeah,
here we're going to land it here. The landing is Copilot is there. It's in my browser. It's for free. I can use it in Edge. I can go get a custom one. I can use ChatGPT. I could ask it, hey, write this M code in Python. Rewrite this, and it just boom does it. Like there's almost no, it's almost frictionless. And if someone gave me a slightly better experience inside notebooks with agents, you wouldn't need anything. I mean, if you gave me the VS Code GitHub like experience inside notebooks, which it's not quite there yet. We're not there yet fully. I know. But I'm with you, Tommy. But when you get that, then I have me as a business user who maybe is a little uncomfortable writing code. The fact that I can talk to Copilot and say, write me a function that does this. Outspits an answer. I can put it in my notebook and test it. It almost works almost 100% of the time.
You and I should be able to create a data flow UI that basically writes Python. All those functions are available in Python. So there's your notebook. There's your UI. Done. Solved. Okay.
Tommy, I 100% agree with you. But my complaint here is, so yes, 100% agree with you on that standpoint. Actually, data flows Gen 2 missed the mark in my opinion. It should have just written Python, and it should just be like, here's the Python transformations that you need. I'm just going to go run that on a very simple Spark cluster, either single node or multiple node. And it's already, when you have bigger data, it automatically would handle it.
Sure.
But the issue here for me is, Tommy, the way I read the data flows team, they're continually pushing the price higher because of the UI. So we could build it, but it's the UI issue. I'm going to
give them a little more credit on that one, but
it's the issue of the UI. They're pushing the price up to run that thing, even if it wrote Python, I still don't think we'd get the pricing where we want it to be, because Dataflows Gen 2 is priced so much higher than everything else, because they're trying to say, look, we've made this so clicky, draggy, droppy for you. That's the price you're paying, and you're going to pay it every single time you run the job. And that's where I'm saying, I don't want to do that anymore. And now that I have agents, I don't need, code is so much less scary now with agents or copilots.
Well, I want to touch back on something you said about DAX and SQL. And I think this is an important distinction, because this really goes back to two major factors for me. It's how we're writing our instructions, but also more importantly, the language itself.
Mhm.
So think about SQL. First, it's probably like 20-1 the amount of coding examples they have with SQL to DAX in terms of the training data that they have.
Sure.
But
Yes.
two, SQL always outputs a number or an aggregation, right? If I write join this group by, I always get a solid number. But DAX is different because filter context, right? If we know the philosophy of a DAX, or not philosophy, but the mechanics of a measure, well, it's never calculated until some filter context. So that's an interesting thing there too. So that requires and it doesn't say that a lot in the documentation. If you're writing DAX on semantic model, that's your data agent. You need to provide it instructions that go through this. Because for me, I've seen a lot of success with prompting and getting a really solid DAX function, but has required a ton of instructions and context on the model, even to the point of I'm filtering on this. When I interact with this needs to ensure it stays or modifies. When I provided that type of detail, I get really great DAX. But if I just say, hey, I have two tables joined, then it can get very wonky. Do you have anything else on that? Because there's something I really want to touch on when we're talking about the data sources here that we have not touched on.
So that's a great, thanks for lobbing it over to me. I would agree with you, Tommy. That's the same, like, what comes to mind is, am I spending so much time writing the prompt that it would have been just faster for me to like actually just learn DAX and just write it the way I wanted, right? And maybe Tommy, when you're talking about this really kind of elaborate prompt that's doing a lot of things, right? There's also this kind of concept of a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Here's my two tables. Here's my relationship. Calculate this, right? You kind of give it the simple, calculate my sum of sales and whatever. And it will write you a DAX statement. But like with what we all doing, sometimes your thoughts aren't fully fleshed out about that particular measure. And you need to think more about, wait a minute, that didn't quite work the way I wanted to. And so then you have a conversation of a bit more, okay, no, I actually don't want that. I want you to retain this filter context when I click on this, but then let this one be flexible. So I think sometimes too, again, it's your knowledge, Tommy, of like the report and the semantic model is much higher than I think an average user would be. And so, Copilot may need to ask some clarifying questions, be a bit more like interactive to you to say,
I need a little more info before we get this running.
Yeah. Here's a basic measure. It's just going to calculate this very simple thing. And then, Tommy, to your point, the reason you're getting really good DAX out of it is because you understand the relationship between the visual, the DAX you're trying to write, and the
filter context works. The
filter context and the report context. So there's this concept here, like, if we know this, how is the AI or the Copilot helping us get through that filter context conversation?
Right.
And maybe there's correct. And
well, again, you and I aren't looking for the DAX statement. We're looking for when a user asks a certain question, how to write that DAX statement, which goes on to my next point, unless you had anything here.
Nope, I'm good.
This to me is the elephant in the room on data agents and Copilot in general. I think a lot of people are getting confused the data that we're using and training data or lack thereof. And this is what I mean. Any agent, any model, go to Hugging Face, go to any place where there's an AI model that can be utilized. It runs on data, and we say that a lot of times, but the misconception is it doesn't run on random data, but it runs also on training data. That's why there are different, when you say a different model, it's because it's been trained on different things. And that doesn't mean it can't be trained on a semantic model. Like there's another post about semantic models or what AI needs to use. That's fine. I agree with that. but not training data. And this is the problem, I think, Mike, right now, and especially where people are saying, hey, we have all this data with data agents. You do, but you don't have a good you don't have a good agent, because do you know what a training data actually looks like? And this is the difference here. It's more vector based, but it's really input and expected output a million times kind of thing. And letting the agent know, if we get any types of questions around this, this should be the expected output in text, or if it's an image type model. And all we have available to us is the final data, right? And we can't create a data, like in a sense, its own template to say, hey, data agent one, if you got questions like this is expected output. This is expected data source to use. We only have a single prompt to use, which is not going to be sufficient for a lot of people's queries. It's sufficient for the exact query that you give, because in a sense, when you think about it, Mike, your prompt is a single record for the data, for that data agent, as an example of what to do. What we really should be providing it is a training source data to say, here's all the types of queries we may get, or questions we may get, or questions that we may get. Here's the output we want. This is what data agents, or let me back up. This is what agents run on, Mike. When you look at any model, any AI model uses training data before we get to the real data. And I think there's a lot of confusion here. He's like, oh, I can use my data in a data agent. Great. Why isn't it working? Because we have not trained it on anything. And Mike, this is where here I'm seeing the hiccup.
There's a knowledge gap between the agent and what we want, right? And in some situations, 100%. We're going to know very clearly what kind of answers we're looking for.
Sure.
And then there's a lot of this like choose your own adventure type path stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like I have a harder time getting to the answer of like, what is it actually doing? Like, how did it get to this answer? Yes, I feel like data agents is more of like, here's a pile of information, right? A lakehouse, a warehouse, a semantic model. And you're kind of going to present this as here's a collection of data. Users, you may now ask questions or interact with it, and it will, again, I do like the idea of like I feel like it does a pretty decent job of like, hey, if I give it a warehouse, it's going to write SQL. If I ask some specific questions around, if I'm very careful about what I'm asking for. So I feel like this is, let me say it this way. Me as the user, I still need to learn how to use it correctly, right? This is a new technology. Still think very in prompting and how to prompt and what's the questions you should ask, and how do I ask a question to it in a way that's going to get me the answer that I want. If I want a very specific answer, I have to write a much more elaborate prompt to get down very closely to the details. But if I want just more of like a general answer, like what's the average discount by product ID, I've got to make sure that me, the user, is understanding, okay, does that table exist? Am I writing the columns in a similar, again, you don't have to be spot on. This is one of the things that I think is different between this experience and like Q&A.
Yes. I know
in Q&A, you had to be like exactly, if it wasn't exactly the column name, exactly the way you phrase
chart,
it wasn't able to figure it out. And then now it's
conversational.
It's a bit more conversational. And then you have to kind of start with this. And maybe to some degree, this is when I look at like the Copilot Home experience as well. Again, that's the one I've probably played with the most. I'm kind of relating it to that as well. Start with a generic question. Just get it to return some sort of result. And then once you have the result, you can say, interesting. I can see the results of that data. Let's start talking about, okay, I'm asking for average discount by product. Well, maybe we should start talking about, can you make a bin, bin this information into groupings, or, the average discount should be represented as a percentage. Can you please represent it as a percentage instead of just a number, right? So then I can more humanly read it. So you can be more specific as you go, but again, it's more conversational, right? You can ask it. I'm programming it with my language, my text. And me personally, I'm not good at it yet. Like I'm still trying to figure out, how do I talk to it?
I think the reason why no one is because the other misconception, I think, is when we think of a data agent, we think it can do all things. That's not true, but many data agents can do a lot of things. And here's what I mean by this. We hear data agents, you think, I'm going to create one over this data source. I'm going to create another over multiple data sources. And that's sounds fine, but it's one of those, if it sounds too easy, it probably is. There's another approach here, Mike, that I've been seeing much more successful is I'm creating, and I don't say this often to people, but limit yourself. Limit your possibilities per data agent. And this is, hopefully this gets a little clear here, but I'm creating data agents that really accomplish specific tasks. I have orchestration available to me, so I can have multiple agents in the same conversation, but I don't want a single data agent to do a lot of general things. I want a single data agent to do some very specific things. For example, rather than a data agent for a semantic model, Mike, I've been testing semantic or like 5 data agents with the semantic model. Like, hey, you are the sales agent, man. You know all the things about reps and you know their quota. And that's it. That's all they're going to touch. I have another one that's going to be based on the budget and the operations. Hey, you're my date time intelligence agent. Anything that has to do with measures on time intelligence, anything that's to do with our month to date numbers, you're going to help us there current. Anything that's going to be based on my quota or my budget, that's all they're focused on. And that seems to work a lot better because, again, we're limited right now by a single prompt query. And it's very, again, the more you add to that prompt, it's not going to understand all of that. You're still dealing with the basics of prompt engineering, right? What you show in the beginning is more important. How you word things is very important. And if you have 300 characters or 300 lines, well, not everything's going to be treated with the same priority. So there's another approach here where we kind of limit our data agents, but create more of them. And I'm finding that to be more successful because let's not kid ourselves. We're still dealing with a product that most companies don't know how their own AI works. Mike, I think I said this to you, but Anthropic it's my favorite white paper I've ever read in my life. And it's Anthropic who creates Claude, and it's their study on how they think Claude works. Another way of saying that, it's their best guess on what they created, how it does what it does. They don't even know. It's their estimate. It's their theory, which is mind-boggling. So we're still dealing with this world where most it's like I was like, look, here's a nice lasagna. I don't know what's in it, but here I can guess.
But it tastes good.
Like it looks like tomato. And you're like,
there may be a rock in it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I made it. It's like I was part of the process a little. Would you eat it? Like, and so a lot of things are like this. Now it is really cool, but I'm going back to the point here is I think there's a mind shift we need to do when we're looking at data agents. Rather than a data agent can solve all things, is many data agents can solve a lot of little things and can be very successful that way. Mike, let me kind of throw that back to you here. I'm gonna, again, to your point, I'm gonna volley that back to you. And your approaches with data agents, or kind of your starting point here, the methodology that you've been trying to take a look at. We've talked about where it's like, I don't see this, but where are you seeing this kind of be more like, okay, I see the potential here?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a game we're playing here too, because as I'm building this one, so you could basically, I mean, you can give the AI agent some very good instructions, right? So I, literally while we're talking here, I have an agent up. I'm asking some questions. I've added a lakehouse table. So, think about the different layers of your lakehouse and what information's in it, right? So, for example, a lakehouse has tables and columns. That's basically all the metadata you get for a lakehouse. You can't add a description to the table name. There are no measures. I'm not building relationships in the lakehouse between different tables. I have to define all those things. So if we're pulling data from that area, you have to give it more instructions to help it understand these are how this stuff works inside the lakehouse. Now, if we move forward to like semantic models, the semantic model has a lot of metadata in it.
Yes.
Right. And so if you give the agent the semantic model can have relationships between tables, descriptions of columns, actual measures that calculate something, and us as designers of those things need to add enhanced information about this measure calculates this, it's filtering because of this.
Right.
These types of things are stationary in the filters. They will be calculated every single time. And while this one, so when you get more complex DAX, you could just let the AI read the DAX, but it also helps to have human-based context as to why that measure exists.
Right.
So as I'm playing with this right now, I'm playing with a lake house, and the lake house I defined, hey, list me the top 10 orders with the highest revenue. And then and because it's a lake house, there is no calculation to define revenue. I have quantity and price, but then I have to say, okay, go in and take the quantity times the price, that equals revenue. I have to define some math to it, and it did it. I mean, it actually returned the result. It gave me a SQL statement. Return the top 10, sum this, group by that, revenue this. So my experience is when the thing is writing SQL, it's pretty dang good. And to your point, Tommy, right? If we're going after raw tables of data and telling the AI what we want, it's pretty intelligent to figure out from that information, what do I need to produce and get you an answer? Where I think things get a little bit more interesting here, this is kind of what my point was, is there's a relationship between the designers, the pro developers, and the AI and how people are going to perceive it. So I could build a bunch of measures. So for example, I could have gone to the same table inside a semantic model, made a measure that calculated revenue, and then the agent would have to be, I could have written the same question, but now because I'm in the semantic model, I can give it more metadata and context, so the user doesn't have to work as hard, right? So I feel like in the same way that we're designing, this is maybe going to sound like an analogy, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. In the same way I play with the semantic model to build measures and columns and data structures to support the visuals, I'm playing the same game between the lakehouse, the semantic model, the KQL databases to build enough metadata either in the instructions of the AI or within the semantic model so the AI can read it. And then we can now transition over to, okay, now that we have the metadata. So now I'm playing this game between, okay, what does the agent resolve when I ask this question? And then what do I have to supply the agent either in metadata in the semantic model or instructions? So if I can't supply it directly with the semantic model, again, thinking this is serving two purposes. The semantic model serves business users who are trying to create their own reports on top of the semantic model. And now I'm also thinking about programming for the agent as well. Those two things combined makes it easier for me to write less instructions inside the AI agent. So again, all this to me feels like a balance beam between effort and value. I'm going to keep going back to that.
Yeah, no, I'm curious here because you mentioned something that you're beginning to fire the synapses here. With the lake house, I mean, we have so many more possibilities. And I still, Mike, to this day, and when I was nervous when Fabric came out, like, how is this going to work? Man, I loved the fact what we can do with lake houses because it opens up so many more doors in terms of storage and what we can function, especially to the user. And it's something like this scenario I'm going to propose. Well, theoretically, Mike, we could add to a lake house almost that training data or that metadata as additional columns. Like, hey, look to this here in the same table, that same raw table for whether examples or what to filter or whatnot, where we're providing AI context to the AI in the lake house itself, where we almost have those like feeder columns or those true or false that are only meant for AI, only meant for the data agent to see. That can be part of my prompting. Like, hey, these columns are for you. If someone mentions this, anything that has a true for the AI, sales, only include that. That's another possibility here where we can actually feed it with some additional information and utilize a lakehouse. You're not dealing with semantic model getting loaded with additional columns because it's in the lakehouse. So there is some points that you're saying here too, and I want to touch briefly. I love your point too. There's effort versus the benefit here. How much effort am I going to be putting in for the prompting? And even if I did this true or false with AI helper columns, call them agent helper columns. I might write a blog on that. But agent helper columns, if I'm putting all this effort into this, well, what's the value we're going to get out at this point compared to your point, someone does the explore in Power BI, right? Or someone goes to the metric set in Power BI.
I guess, yes, I agree. I will agree with that one. And I want to add something to that because I think we should focus on what is the end game. Right. So
go ahead. Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting flashy tools here. What's the end game, right? What is the end game of letting users answer that question first? And I think that helps you direct a lot of your attention towards should I be spending time in agents or should I be spending time in something else? So is the end game to expose and help users understand the tables in a lakehouse? Right? Is that the end game? Is the end game for you to allow users to talk to a semantic model and answer real business questions and walk away with an actionable item? Is that the end game? Is the end game for the users to talk to a semantic model or the AI through the semantic model and actually produce a report for one time, for repeatable reports? Like what are we doing there? So like I think if you decide the purpose of what you're trying to put the agent in, I think a lot of organizations are like, Copilot's here, agents are here. We need these. How do we use them? How are we using new technology? Because they want to message. They want the message to their leadership. We're using AI and it's adding value. I think it's a hot buzzword and people want to figure it out. But I think there's a pause moment here. I would caution you, pause and step back and just kind of wait and say, why are we putting I agree, you should use agents if they make sense. But why are you using them? Right. What is the end game? And I think if you just clearly define what is the end game, I think you'll be able to sift out some of these hot new features and say, well, if the end game is this repeatable, regularly reusable report, then we should just build that. We should spend the effort instead of trying to get this AI to kind of build this. You use the AI to build a report. We just build the report we know we need, get our experts in there and do that. Okay, fine. Now, if there's something around the idea of we want people to discover things or go start learning SQL or start learning how to go manipulate things, that's a little bit different story. Right? Because if I'm in agent mode and I'm asking questions of my lakehouse, it's actually going to write SQL statements for me. And so the way I learned SQL was, sadly enough, I took a class on it eventually, but I started SQL learning it inside Access, at an Access database. And it was so. Again, it goes down to this whole. I started learning the graphical interface of making tables, joining them together, adding relationships, and then I was able to pluck and pull columns down to a graphic interface. And again, it couldn't do everything. It would do some of the simple operations for SQL, but then it would work. So that, to me, that was very useful. That was how I started learning. Yeah. I think agents in some way will be this next level for people to learn how to write SQL again. So, and they don't have Access anymore, but now they have agents. So, hey, agent, I want to do this. And then here's the SQL statement to do it. Oh, well, I didn't want that column as a number. I want you to format it as a number. Can you change it? And now it does, oh, here's a cast statement. Here's the numeric, and we'll then format it for you. And then you can take that statement and go to a SQL endpoint or the warehouse directly and run and execute that against the SQL endpoint. So I think the end game of what you're trying to do with these agents is very important here, because that'll help you decide if you should spend time building it or not. I'll just pause there. Does that make sense?
Mike, it's like we've done 460 episodes together, because I completely agree here. And I'll take this a little more micro in terms of how I was taking what you said, because I was literally going to say with data agents and really what's the use here? What's the scenario here? When we do, how would you recommend this in an organization? And they are very much right now, to me, what I call conscious workflows. I would not go into a data agent right now and just start exploring. Yeah, we'll test something out. They work much better in Copilot Studio, and with what I'm really a conscious effort on, hey, what's the persona here? I'm not creating a data agent for the organization. This is for Anne in operations. Anne has to go through her normal day-to-day X, Y, and Z. Connect to that data, have the Copilot Studio with the orchestration, but have simple workflows here. And it does do a really great job there. But they need to have, again, to your point, end game, you're talking big picture here. I'm talking a little more little picture here on if you do want to get started and you're like, you know what? I want to explore this. You have to have very simple, or not simple rather, but very conscious workflows of persona and expected action that they're trying to do. Right now, that's probably where we're at in that playground. That's what the playground and the tools available to us kind of designate. But I'll take it back with what you're saying here, because I really do love it. Is right now, everyone's trying to keep up with the AI Joneses. That's just how it is, basically, kind of thing. So, well, if they have AI, and we should be using AI, and Fabric has AI, and that's great, and it's fine. But let's not beat around the bush here. there are some limitations here. If you want to utilize it like the other AI dedicated tools out there, which have training data, weighting, modeling, vector databases, they have all the other data sources here. We don't have that in Fabric. And that's okay. That's okay right now, because
Mhm.
we do have something. A data agent is not another version of Anthropic or another ChatGPT right now. Let's
Sure.
get that out of our mind. But what it can be is actually very effective. Again, it's just not, you're not creating chat GPT in a data agent. And that's
Mhm.
probably not not the use case right now. Can it solve someone's problem in operation who has to input a bunch of information? Great. Yeah. And Mike, I'm going to volley back to you, because I know where we're going with this. We've talked about this before. What does this remind you of? What does this sound like to you, Mike?
Yeah, I said, Tommy, I'm chatting here, you on the side here. I just threw down an image in our chat between you and I, Tommy. So just, I think this is where you're going with this
Yeah.
one. I feel like so the AI, like where are we in what we call the Gartner hype cycle, right? New technology comes out. There's this kind of like wave of like excitement of like, here's the new thing. This is going to be amazing. And then you hear all these people saying, this is the first generation. We're early to adopting. There's a mass media hyping that's going on. Like everyone's excited about this. You have to get these things. It's work, figure it out. And then, so everyone starts supplying these things. And then we have this early adopters. Everyone's early adopting. And then, people come in and say, well, is it really worth the value? Is it, you start having some negative press. Some suppliers start consolidating or failing, and then you start having second or third rounds of venture capital, and so funding comes in, and then you kind of hit this trough of disillusionment. So when you think about the different areas, I think we're just beyond the peak of inflated expectations. I think people are starting to get a little bit more real with AI agents. At least I am. In some cases, is extremely powerful, but I also realize it can't do everything. It's not the silver bullet. I don't go into this thinking, oh, Copilot and agents are going to be, I'm going to delete all my reports and I'm just going to use agents. I'm not, that's not the story here. So I think there's some alignment to people's expectations and the effort and time it takes to build the agents themselves. And again, to be honest here, Microsoft has agents in preview. It's still a feature that is being refined. It's still getting its legs. It's still trying to figure itself out here. So I think we're close to the trough of disillusionment, where people are saying it adds some value, but it's not enough value yet. And we need a couple more iterations on the solution to then align, okay, what are people's expectations and needs to what the agents can start doing. Now, I will agree, of the two hype cycles that we've had, Q&A was like this really big thing. It was in every demo. I don't hear anyone talking about Q&A now. Like it's done its time. Agents feels like this next kind of wave of Q&A, but at a much better pace and much more useful tooling. So maybe I'm looking too short at this. Maybe my trough of disillusionment is too small. Maybe I should have gone, was Q&A visual the first trigger of talk with your data, right? And we've already gone through the trough of disillusionment. Like we've already done it. And this Copilot is now agents now. This is the second or third generation evolution on chat with your data. And so now we're getting like, okay, this does add real value. This does seem useful. And so we're actually, the tooling is now shifting a much. And maybe I'm trying to figure out like where we are. There's probably like little mini hype cycles, and there's like the big hype cycle, right?
I think that's fair. Because Mike, I think the biggest misconception again, I really think is people are expecting that this data agents to be their chat GPT and their model, their AI model. And it's not meant for that. And that's, again, to me, okay. I'm trying to champion data agents and I really do see the value here, but I don't want to say hamper your expectations or, it's not as good as you think. It's not that at all. It has its function and it has its, and to your point, end game, but it's not the full, hey, I'm going to open up ChatGPT and I'm going to open up my Copilot data agent and they're both going to work exactly the same. Not the case. So as long as you understand that, then I think that actually opens up what data agents can do. A lot of people are trying to prompt it so it's their own local model that's running everything and can do everything. And I guess that sounds like a closing thought here, but I'll probably end with that because I love these conversations. For me, as I look at the future here with data age, unless you had something else, don't want
Nope.
to close it too early. Yeah.
No, I will
Okay.
end on my closing thought as well. I think this is a good time to close as well. So one thing I think I would say from this conversation, unpacking what we're doing, I really believe that agents will be very helpful. They will be useful. I think we underestimate the amount of time needed to invest in developing them and getting them to be useful to team members. I think there's a little bit of an underestimation right now at this point. Now it's getting better. I really would like some sort of like testing framework around this. Like, so I've done all this instructions. I've done a couple questions on my own. I've done some, hey, when I get this question, return this kind of answer. But I think at some point we need some level of like saying, I'm going to have this, like, it almost feels a little bit like, Tommy, like when we do even data validation, right?
Yeah.
Because the AIs are kind of a little bit undeterministic, it would be really nice to have a way of being able to say, look, I'm going to ask a handful of questions to it. And then before I publish it, it will go through and will it return the right results or the right answers to me? So that way, again, thinking through this as well, if I change the AI, if I add different instructions, if I tweak it a little bit, those same 5 or 6 or 10 questions that I think are going to be needed to be outputted, I have to have some level of confidence it's going to give me the right kinds of answers for users, and it's going to be the right answers. So for some reason, that seems like something that needs to exist.
Yeah.
All this I'll say is it's a balancing act. This is a balancing act between value and effort. And I think right now, I'm not quite sure I'm sold yet. Excuse me.
Mike sneezes. He's good.
Oh, excuse me. So anyways, that being said, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think data agents are a very good evolution here. If I had to look at the bigger spectrum of things, when Q&A came out versus what I see data agents doing, I feel like data agents is way more capable, adding a lot more value than what we did initially with just a Q&A visual inside Power BI Desktop. So if anything, we've gotten another round of chat with your data. Right. Or, ask questions of your data and get results from your data. I think this whole new experience is very much changing things, and I really like it. Again, I'm still also in this learning mode of I still got to figure out how to prompt everything better. And my children and my kids are going to have this. I mean, their whole world is going to be get computers, learn how to prompt from, like, could you imagine, Tommy, imagine if you were coming out into high school and your first couple interactions with computers, you can do the things in the computers, but then you start seeing these agent things pop up and you just talk to it and it just does things.
You just go, that's right? Just a computer kind of thing.
Well, and the reason why I'm saying this is back to my very early comment around data flows Gen 2, which is like, why use that? Or why not just write notebooks and code, right? Well, if I'm already learning to write English or my home language, Spanish, Portuguese, wherever you live, right? If I can write that language directly to a computer, it can understand what I'm trying to do and output a result that's decent. Yeah. Like anything I say, write a Python function. Like when do we just drop all languages? Like when is the computer programming language just dropped?
You're going big picture here, yeah.
Right. No, when do we need none of it? And you just talk to it, and it will be. Maybe it'll show you, but it'll be like, yeah, it runs on it, but like we really don't need to know it anymore. The AI is just so good. We just keep prompting it with a couple different ways, and it just fixes itself. Like there's going to be a day, I think, and I think it's coming very soon, where writing Python or SQL or KQL will be almost non-existent, and we'll talk to it in regular terms, and we'll just know what to do all the way through. Anyways, let's wrap it there. Thank you all for listening to the podcast around agents today. I hope you found this kind of informative. Let us know in the comments. It actually really does help the algorithm if you engage with this content, either on YouTube or other places. What are you doing with it? Are you using them today? Do you have perspectives on where this is working for you and where it's not working for you? Please let us know in the comments. Tommy and I do read them, and we do comment, and we'll respond back to your comments as well. Check that out as well. Also, I want to point out, if you like this episode and you'd like to watch this episode without any advertisements, you can do that because YouTube puts ads on videos, and that's how it happens. So go check out our videos, become a member. Our lowest level of membership will let you say, visualize this. So you can also go in and watch this episode with no ads. The videos will be posted right after we do them, also on YouTube as well. With that being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
And there's more, Mike. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It really does help us out a ton. And share with a friend because we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Maybe a little more data agents or AI or just Power BI or anything else. Head over to powerbi.tip/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI.Tips social media channels.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.